Retired General David Petraeus, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Yoram. Thank you.
The first question is about Iran. What is your take on Iran's military maneuvers in the region, and to what extent do they pose a threat to Israel?
Well, I think they pose a threat to Israel. I think they pose a threat to the region and arguably to the world. Iran has long wanted to achieve a degree of hegemony, if you will, in the Shia-populated countries of the region and even beyond that, if they can. And Iran has also wanted to achieve that in part by Lebanonizing Iraq and Syria in the way that they Lebanonized Lebanon using Lebanese Hezbollah and using the Iranian-supported Shia militias in Iraq, which also have a political role because of the positions of their leaders, and of course the tens of thousands of Shia militias they've introduced into Syria to add to what they're already doing there with the Quds Force and with some of their regular elements to try to achieve, again, a degree of political control in Syria so that they can solidify the so-called Shia crescent running from Iran through Iraq, Syria, and then, of course, down into southern Lebanon and Lebanese Hezbollah. They've sought to do this in a variety of different ways, everything from developing nuclear weapons, very capable, increasingly capable missiles, and terrorist forces, special operations forces, the Quds Force, and indeed proxy elements in the tens of thousands, as we've seen. Of course, we battled some of these elements during the surge in Iraq, defeated them, in fact, in the battles of Basra and Sadr City and elsewhere, only to see them come back tragically when the invasion by the Islamic State gave them a new reason to return to the streets with their weapons. So in the end of the day, Iran is a revolutionary power. They're not satisfied with the status quo. They want to change it, and they've used every means available to do that. But I should note that when they have run up against a counter force that is credible, they have generally backed up and waited for another day. They know in particular that, you know, a conventional war between us and Iran would be painful. It would be catastrophic for them. And I think that in recent times in particular, they're seeing that the United States is going to stay engaged in this region, that it knows the difference between its friends and its enemies, and Israel is very much its friend, and that the United States is going to stand by its friends in the region, and indeed it's going to do all that it can to help countries like Iraq evolve now that they have defeated the Islamic State.
What issues will engage the United States in the Middle East in the post-ISIS era?
Well, I think there will be a number of issues. Some of these are enduring issues. You know, we still have a vital national interest in the free flow of energy resources through the Gulf and out to the markets in the East and the West. I mean, that energy, even though we are much more independent in the United States because of the energy revolution in America, nonetheless, that energy still fuels the global economy in many respects. So that's an enduring interest that is still present. We obviously are going to stand by our ally Israel and by our friends in the region. And again, I noted earlier that I think we know the difference between our friends and our enemies. And in general, the Sunni Arab countries, the moderate Sunnis in the region, are friends, along with, of course, Israel, and Iran is not. And so we're going to ensure that Iran is not able to establish the kind of hegemony over the region. We would never allow a single power like that to achieve control of this very vital region. We have an enduring interest in ensuring that now that the Islamic State as an army has been defeated, because keep in mind there are still remnants of the Islamic State down around Abu Kamal in the southeastern Euphrates River Valley in Syria. But even when they are defeated, there will still be Islamic State terrorist elements, and there will still be what will now evolve into guerrilla and insurgent elements as well.
They might come back as well?
Well, and we want to make sure that they don't come back, and that is the interest that we have there as well. So again, a number of different interests, I think, that we have in this region, some enduring interests, some somewhat newer interests, but we very much want to help the evolution of this region at what is a very dynamic time with rapidly changing situations to evolve into one that has security and stability.
Okay, let's go forward to the Israeli-Palestinian issue, and what and who can advance an Israeli-Palestinian peace process at this stage?
Well, I think if we're, honest with each other, and we should be, the stars are not exactly aligned right now, I don't think, for the kind of big deal that was sought by Secretary Kerry and the Obama administration. I don't think this is a time where one can, to use a U.S. baseball analogy, hit a home run. And I think, in fact, we need to be careful not to be swinging for the fences, as we say, for fear that we strike out. And rather, we should focus on hitting singles and doubles. We should focus on issues that can help conditions be created down the road so that when the stars are aligned, that the opportunity for a peace settlement is there, so that the Palestinian issue can be resolved along the lines that have always been examined, obviously the two-state solution. So what can we do now? Well, I think we can help foster improvements in the lives of Palestinians. We can continue to help the Palestinians with their development of their security forces, with their abilities to govern themselves, and we can make sure that we try to avoid issues that will make obstacles down the road. By the way, one of the issues that I do think should be addressed on the Palestinian side is the incentivization in their actual budget documents of violence. The so-called pay for slay, as it has been termed. There's legislation in the United States, it's called the Taylor Force Act, named after a West Point graduate, Taylor Force, who was killed by Palestinians and again, by their actual budget, their law, if you will, the families are, in a sense, rewarded for family members, and the more horrific the act, the more they actually get paid. And I think this has to be ended over time. There have to be positive incentives in the place so that there's hope for the future, rather than, again, a system that actually incentivizes violence against fellow human beings.
And finally, who are Israel's strategic allies in the region currently, and how can Israel broaden its collaboration with them?
Well, certainly I think there is an unprecedentedly strong relationship between Israel and its neighbor Egypt. This is out of the shared concerns over the threats in the Sinai, but Egypt has been a very good partner with respect to the tunnels that used to enable weapons and so forth to go into Hamas, into Gaza. A problem that was enormous when I was the U.S. Central Command commander. It could never persuade President Mubarak or his government that it was truly imperative to cut those tunnels. There's also obviously a continuing strong intelligence and security relationship with Jordan. So again, you have the establishment, at least on two of the sides, of quite heartening relationships. And you add that to the progress that Israel has made, of course, through Shin Bet, through Mossad, through the IDF, to identify and to stop, in advance actually, to prevent would-be attackers from carrying out terrorist acts. There's an interesting emergence in the region of an alignment of interests between Arab states that used to be vehemently anti-Israeli and call for the destruction of Israel. And this is, of course, what's evolving now with the Gulf states. Some of the Gulf states, because of their enormous concern about Iran and other shared threats, the Islamic State and so forth, are seeing a convergence of interests and an almost breathtaking amount of contact, albeit below the surface, behind the scenes, but written publicly in news accounts that are describing again the emergence of ties between Israel and again several of the Gulf states. And that's quite dramatic and very significant. It's not inconceivable that at some point in time those countries could transform from the way they used to regard Israel to actually normalizing the relations between Israel with the most important and most capable military power based in the region, of the countries in the region. Arguably, the United States forces are the most important and powerful in the region. But I think this is really an exciting prospect. And of course, always, not just over the horizon, but right here in the region, you have what I hope Israel regards as its most important ally, and that is, of course, the United States. We have enormous common interests with Israel, and those common interests, I think, are leading to it strengthening, really, in the past year or so in that relationship.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, General David Petraeus, for this interview.
Privileged to be with you. Thanks.
Great.
Good. Thank you.